We are now getting confirmation that Kuwait and Bahrain are now part of this fight. This after Iran launched attacks on the two countries in response to the strikes by U.S. forces this week. The Bahrain Defense Force actually documented on the ground Iranian missiles and drones targeting civilian neighborhoods, residential towers, international airports, hotels where expats and Gulf civilians live and work. Thankfully, anti-aircraft missiles shot them down. This is Iran's revealed strategic doctrine when it's under military pressure and has no effective military response. It can't strike back at American warships effectively. It can't strike back at American air bases effectively. Its fast attack boat fleet is being progressively destroyed every time it attempts to concentrate. So it strikes the one thing it can still reach: schools, hotels, apartment buildings, the people sleeping in the neighborhoods of the countries that had been trying to stay out of this conflict, like the UAE and Kuwait and Bahrain. This is not an asymmetric military response. It's desperation. It's the deliberate civilian targeting by a regime that has exhausted its military options and is now hoping that enough civilian casualties will generate international political pressure to force a halt. It's the very same playbook that Hamas employed. It's the same approach the Houthis demonstrated in the Red Sea. The tactics the IRGC taught its proxy armies in the region for decades are now being applied directly by the IRGC itself. And how did Kuwait and Bahrain respond? How did they respond? Did they respond the way the Iranians hoped they would, like by pressuring the Trump administration? Please, you got to stop this. Look, my people are getting restless. They don't like the fact that you're bombing fellow Muslims, and you got to really stop this. Nope, didn't happen. It's happened before in years past, not happening now in this new world. Reports are that Bahrain and Kuwait have responded by joining the fight with U.S. forces. It's being reported that Kuwait and Bahrain have indeed launched retaliatory strikes on IRGC positions across Iran. And this, of course, is it comes from the brilliant new security architecture that Trump brokered back in his first term, called the Abraham Accords, that unites Israeli muscle with Arab money to create a framework for a lasting peace and prosperity in the Middle East for the foreseeable future. This is exactly what's taking place right now, particularly with Bahrain. Bahrain is a member of an official member of the Abraham Accords. It's a security architecture designed to forever sideline Iran and box out China from intimidating the region, China being Iran's principal financier, at least they were before this conflict. And we're seeing it in effect with the Arab world striking Iran directly on Iranian soil in coordination with the United States military. And even at one point in the first wave of this conflict, we have reports that Saudi Arabia had joined in some of the bombing attacks. So Saudi Arabia was fighting side by side with Israel in that first round, that first phase. So the Mullahs' grand strategy has backfired catastrophically. Big picture, what's happening here when all is said and done, right? We want to make sense of the madness here. That's what we're here for on this channel. So make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Big picture, when all said and done, what's happening here is the spiraling out of this regime. It was a very entrenched regime, half a century. It's been building itself up. It's been getting hundreds of millions, billions of dollars collectively from the likes of Russia and China to build up their arsenal, to build up their military, their nuclear capabilities and the like. Through the IRGC, they have an iron grip over their population because the IRGC exists to protect the regime. It exists to protect the Iranian regime. It does not exist to fight off invaders. It exists to keep the Iranian regime safe from a mass uprising. So what we saw in January with the killing of so many people, again, there's discrepant numbers, some as high as I understand 30, 40,000 of the protesters in the street. That's what the IRGC is for. It's for that. It's there to do that, to protect the mullahs and the regime itself from a mass uprising. And so the crackdown that we've been seeing inside Iran right now, we have to understand, is not necessarily a sign of strength. Yes, they are dug in, but in many ways, this mass backlash against their own population that we've seen only escalate since hostilities began back in February, again, it's a sign of desperation. Since Khamenei's death and the IRGC's humiliation, Operation Epic Fury, the regime has lost all legitimacy. Remember, this was the regime that had been ordained by Allah to destroy the great Satan. There was going to be a great conflict with the West, and when that happened, they were hoping they were going to have a bomb to either protect them from that conflict via a mutually assured destruction policy or possibly even use it. And they would show the world that they are who they claim to be, ordained by God to destroy the godless West. That was their claim to legitimacy. And since February, that claim has been humiliated. And since that claim has been humiliated, the regime has had no choice but to dramatically ramp up its internal repression. More condemnations, more assassinations, more public hangings. And the reason is straightforward. They know that Epic Fury, they know that Trump exposed just how weak they really are. They haven't been ordained for jack. They're just a thugocracy that got exposed for being weak and ultimately inert. The repression, therefore, is not confidence. It's a regime trying to terrorize its own population into silence because it's got nothing else left to offer them. I mean, look at their proxies. That was their regional architecture. The Houthis, they could have joined the fight against the United States on an immense scale, particularly in the Red Sea, and shut down Saudi Arabia's alternative route via the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. They had the east-west oil route that went down through the Red Sea. The Houthis could have shut that down. They didn't. They stayed out of this fight. Hezbollah, they're trapped in a confrontation with Israel every day. They can't do anything against the United States. All of their activities against Israel, and Israel's pretty much shut it down. Syria's gone, right? Syria was very important as a logistics corridor for Iran, sending missiles and weaponry into Lebanon. That corridor is gone. That's the primary reason. That's since Abad is gone. That's one of the primary reasons Trump just pulled all sanctions from Syria. Syria is now on our side. Assad, I should say. I'm sorry. Now that Assad is gone, Assad is just hanging out in Moscow right now. So Iran's entire network of regional influence has either collapsed or it's been neutered. And the isolation for Iran now is total. And we saw it particularly, it was humiliating, but we saw it particularly at Khamenei's funeral this week. Iran's closest partners sent only low-level delegations as representatives. Yeah, there were several countries, 60, 70 countries that came to pay the respects, but they sent their grunts over. They didn't send any major leader over there. And then perhaps the most humiliating point of the funeral totally is the fact that Mojtaba Khamenei, the supposed new supreme leader, their own version of their auto pen, the very son of the man being buried, didn't even show up. I mean, whether he's alive or not is irrelevant at this point. The funeral was an absolute diplomatic embarrassment. Iran hit Qatar as part of their response this week, which Qatar was helping mediate relations with U.S. and Israel. They hit the UAE which they had normalized relationships with. And all throughout this conflict, not a single Arab government mobilized its street against America or Israel. No mass protests in Riyadh, no riots in Dubai. The mullahs could not activate the Arab street on behalf of their own cause. That, again, is a humiliation beyond anything, culturally speaking, that we could emphasize here. And then there's the economic picture. I mean, we barely brought that up. The economic, it's nothing short of catastrophic. It was catastrophic before the first bomb dropped. Word on the street is the IRGC now, obviously, is struggling to pay its own soldiers, which is very, very bad because they are a patronage system. That's one of the primary, they don't just use ideology. They also use a patronage system to literally buy loyalty. And when you have any more money to buy that loyalty, guess what happens to it? The loyalty seems to go bye-bye, right? Reports are that there was actually a debate, a bit of a mutiny among IRGC officers about why Hezbollah fighters were getting paid while Iranian soldiers weren't, right? So they have to choose. They've got no money. So whatever money they do have, they have to choose who gets it. Again, word on the street is the regime has been recruiting children into the IRGC out of manpower desperation. I mean, inflation is literally through the roof. Their currency, the rial, is worthless. Basic services are collapsing. And now the Treasury has cut off the oil revenue lifeline simultaneously with the military strikes. Two pressure tracks merging into one, money and military. That's the chokehold. And then there's the deepest wound of all in the end, and that's the generational divide. I mean, seriously, just look around the Middle East and how the Middle East has been conducting itself now. Just say the last 5 years. Azerbaijan and Armenia are moving toward modernization. The UAE, with its ambitious development agenda, they just left OPEC. They want to be the go-to Middle Eastern oil power in the region, so they're going solo there. Saudi Arabia's got their Vision 2030. It's designed to benefit young people and be the economic center of the Middle East for the rest of the century. They are sick of these non-ending wars. They are sick of the ideology. They are sick of all the unrest. They want their region they want Dubai to spread throughout the entire region. They want peace and prosperity, and the Abraham Accords as the roadmap to that. In contrast to that, look at the Islamic Republic. I mean, look at it. They delivered nothing but a constant revolution that its own people no longer believe in anymore. The regime is forcing compliance through symbolism and repression. But it faces a generation that's completely checked out, and it has absolutely no tools to win them back. And it's turned to China and Russia as their chief financiers to guarantee that they'll even still have any relevance in the region. So the bottom line is this. For a military campaign this short, the United States and its allies have done more structural damage to the Islamic Republic than anything we have seen in 47 years, since 1979. And they did it without ground troops. They did it without occupation, just air power, naval blockade, economic strangulation, and a little pressure from the Kurds in the West, for sure. Thousands of Kurdish troops are putting a lot of pressure on Iranians right now. And the systematic dismantlement of every military asset the regime had left. And now the mission is to make sure it stays dismantled. Every target struck is a target that cannot be rebuilt. That's what CENTCOM is executing, 170 targets at a time. So here's the full picture as of today, as we understand it with the information that we have, and really the honest assessment of where the next phase goes. We've got 170 confirmed Iranian military targets destroyed. We've got Iran's oil revenues simultaneously frozen by the Treasury. Iran's military response has been pathetic, to say the least. It's really been civilian targeting drone attacks when all said and done. And it's failed to produce any military effect. It's provided additional justification for everything the United States is doing. Iran's supreme leader remains invisible for 130 days. Someone inside the regime is making back-channel calls about a deal. We don't know who it is. We don't know if they got the authority to actually deliver IRGC compliance. It's all an open question, but the only one that's begging for a deal right now is some voices within the regime. That leads to the other element, a fragmented Iranian command structure in which hardline IRGC commanders are making operational decisions independently of whatever nominal civilian authority exists. They're just now absorbing the largest sustained American strike campaign of this war, while simultaneously being snuffed out with any revenue. $500 million a day, losing coastal military infrastructure, and losing the maritime options that represent its last remaining leverage. So the question now is whether any person in this regime, obviously particularly the one who reportedly is calling American officials desperate for a deal, can anyone in this regime actually deliver something that finally brings this chokehold that's around them in the counter blockade and now a very aggressive offensive against them, bring it to an end? Is there anyone in the regime that finally recognizes and accepts that the old world, literally the old Cold War world that once existed, that provided the platform where Iran could threaten the West with shutting down Hormuz, is there anyone inside of the regime that recognizes that that old world where you can pit Israel against the Arab Gulf countries against each other by just bringing up one word, Palestine? Does anyone inside that regime recognize that world is now dead? That world is over. Certainly there's some influencers on our side that don't recognize that world is over. Does anyone inside the regime recognize that world is over? I mean, the mullahs have been panicking for months. What's changed in the last 48 hours is that the panic is now quite visible from the outside in the civilian targeting drone responses that reveal an absence of effective military options and contradictory public statements of maximalist defiance issued simultaneously with private back channel calls begging for a deal, and just in their pathetic military response and all of this, just it's a whimper. And in just the geographic expansion of the American strike package to include that Chabahar, and systematically dismantling every coastal military asset the regime has remaining. A new world is rising. We've been talking about it, obviously, for many, many years on this channel. But a new world, a civilizationalist world, is rising. And the only question that remains here is whether anyone inside this regime, this old regime, wants to be part of this new world, or whether the regime has decided to die along with the old world they helped create. Did you know that U.S. life expectancy peaked at 78 years back in 2014? Scientists have discovered that kimchi actually slows the aging process of human cells. And now you can get all the benefits of kimchi in a simple capsule with Kimchi One. Give them a call right now at 888-597-0233. Remember, if you call them, you get 50% off plus free shipping. That's 888-597-0233.